Today, we're going to dive into a story that is just mind-bending. It spans 8 whole centuries, linking a regular guy in modern-day Delhi to a powerful medieval sultan. And it all hinges on a single, ancient debt that refused to be forgotten.
I mean, think about that for a second. Could a traumatic event from the 1200s actually reach across time and affect someone living right now? It's a wild thought, but for one man, this wasn't a philosophical question. It was his reality. His life was being derailed by a deep, unexplainable pain, one that came from a past he had no memory of.
So let's meet our protagonist. His name is Samir, and on paper, his life is great. He's an IIT-educated engineer, living in Delhi. He has a loving partner, Asmita. He's the picture of success. But behind closed doors, something was tormenting him, something he just couldn't explain. And this wasn't just, a bad dream. The source material describes this recurring nightmare that was incredibly vivid and terrifying. He would see Lord Shiva's cosmic dance of destruction, the Tandav, and hear the sound of the Damru drums so loud it felt like it would literally burst his eardrums. Just imagine that night after night. Yeah, this was a chronic problem. For years, this vision just hammered away at him, causing these debilitating headaches and completely upending his life. And his partner, Asmita, who had been with him since they were kids, was right there with him, trying to find an answer to a puzzle that no doctor, no modern logic could solve. So when all the usual explanations fell short, what do you do? Where do you even begin to look for an answer? Well, for Samir and Asmita, the path led them backward, deep into the past, into the life of a man he had never even heard of. They were desperate, and that desperation led them to a therapist in Mumbai who specialized in something, well, let's just say it's not exactly mainstream science: past life regression. The whole idea is to use hypnosis to unlock memories that are supposedly from previous lives.
So Samir goes under hypnosis, and he starts talking. But the voice, the memories that started pouring out, they weren't hits. They belonged to someone else entirely. A historical figure from a completely different time.
The name that came out was just shocking. He claimed he was Iltutmish, a 13th century ruler. And this guy's life story is the stuff of legends. Born to a tribal chief, he was sold into slavery by his own brothers. But through sheer talent and grit, he rises up the ranks to eventually become the Sultan of the powerful Delhi Sultanate. Just look at that contrast. It's absolutely staggering, right? On one side, you have this modern, tech-savvy engineer, and on the other, a medieval slave who became a warrior king and built an empire. The therapy was suggesting that these two profoundly different men were somehow the same soul. Okay, so if these two lives are connected, what's the thread? What is the invisible string that ties them together across centuries? Well, the answer is found in this really powerful spiritual idea. The source material calls it Rinanuband. You can think of it as a kind of karmic or spiritual debt. The concept is that our actions, especially the unresolved ones, create these bonds that our soul carries from one life to the next, always seeking to be balanced or resolved. And during that regression session, the origin of this debt became horrifyingly clear. As Sultan Iltutmish, he had ordered the destruction of the sacred Mahakal temple. And in that moment of terrible violence, a priest of the temple unleashed a powerful curse upon his soul. That curse then just echoed through time for 800 years, finally showing up as Samir's nightmares. And you can just feel the profound weight of that regret. Speaking as Iltutmish, Samir laid out the consequences. He believed that curse was so powerful, it didn't just ruin him personally, it brought down his entire dynasty and sentenced his very soul to an eternity of turmoil. So, okay, the problem is finally identified. A curse, almost 1,000 years old. But how in the world do you even begin to heal a wound that ancient? The only answer was a journey. Not just across the country, but a journey of true atonement. The guidance from the therapist was direct. To fix this, he had to go back to the scene of the crime. Samir had to physically travel to Ujjain, the exact place where his soul, as Iltutmish, had committed this terrible act. He had to face the source of the pain. And what a journey it turned out to be. He arrives during the massive Kumbh Mela festival, and his path becomes this incredible series of events. He meets the descendants of the very same priest families, performs rituals, and then has this fateful meeting with a mystic, a sadhu, who guides him through a really intense spiritual trial. The sadhu's words just cut right to the heart of it. So direct, so profound. He basically said, look, you can't run from this. The only way out is through. You have to be willing to face the darkest parts of your soul's history to find any light. So after the pilgrimage, all the rituals, and this intense spiritual boot camp, the story finally arrives at its breaking point, its moment of truth. He's faced his past head on. And after all that, Samir has one final, powerful vision. But this time, it wasn't a nightmare of destruction. It was a moment of absolute clarity, one that handed him the very key to his own freedom. And here it is. This is the core of his breakthrough. The shift in perspective was everything. You see, Iltutmish had used religion as a justification for conquest and power. But the path to healing was the exact opposite. It was about choosing inner peace over worldly power, compassion over violence, and a deep spiritual understanding over conflict. And the final piece of this puzzle came to him in a vision of the great Sufi saint, Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti. The source says the saint showed him the true heart of his own faith, a heart built on peace, on compassion, on respect, not the violent conquest he'd pursued as Iltutmish. And that was the click. That was it. That moment of profound understanding, seeing the compassion that ties all true spirituality together, that was the key. A curse born from religious violence was finally undone by religious harmony. The Rinubandha, the debt, was finally paid in full.
And just like that, the nightmares stopped. The headaches were gone. Samir went back to Delhi, back to Asmita, back to his life. He was no longer a man haunted by a sultan's ancient crime, but a soul that was finally free to live its own life.
This whole incredible story really leaves you thinking. I mean, whether you believe in past lives or just see it as a powerful metaphor for how trauma can be passed down, it really makes you ask the question, what quiet echoes, what unseen debts from the past might be shaping the lives we're living today?